Bronny James might be packing his bags. Not because he asked for it, because his dad just blew up the roster he plays for. LeBron told the Lakers he's done, and that one decision just turned his son into one of the most talked about trade chips in the league. Teams are already rearranging their rosters around a move that hasn't even been announced yet. So what happens now to the kid wearing number 9 and to the father who built his whole final chapter around playing next to him? Bronny James getting traded by the Cavaliers starts with a decision LeBron made weeks ago, and it's already reshaping 2 franchises. Let's start with the roster spot. Cleveland has one sitting open, and nobody there will say why out loud. Free agency opened, and the Cavaliers barely moved. They re-signed a backup center to a minimum deal. They watched 2 of their own rotation guys walk out the door to other teams. For a team that just got swept out of the conference finals, that kind of silence doesn't happen by accident. According to insiders Mark Stein and Jake Fisher, the Cavaliers were expected by now to have come to terms on a new deal with James Harden and had been in the mix of teams expressing interest in Jonathan Kuminga. Instead, they signed a reserve center and let 2 contributors leave for other cities. Stein and Fisher put it plainly. One theory going around the league is that Cleveland wants to make sure it has open roster spots to trade for the Lakers' Bronny James in the event that they're able to welcome his dad back as a free agent signee. That's the domino. LeBron picks Cleveland. Bronny follows him there in a trade. Everyone around the league has been saying it for weeks now. Here's why it's not just talk. Bronny's rookie contract runs through next season, and his team option isn't up until the 2027-28 season, meaning he'd have to be traded or waived to follow his dad to a new team. The Lakers can't just release him and call it a day if they want value back. They'd need a trade partner, and Cleveland has been positioning itself to be exactly that, holding open spots, specifically so it can absorb him the moment LeBron's ink is dry. Then the Lakers made a move that read like a signal flare. They shipped DeAndre Ayton, their starting center, the guy who'd anchored their front court all season, out to Washington. The return, a guard and a couple of second-round picks on its own. That's a minor roster tweak, but the timing tells the real story. The trade signaled that Bronny James will likely be dealt to wherever LeBron James lands in free agency. One report framed it even more bluntly, noting that Bronny James is likely next, since he continues to improve but isn't ready for a nightly role, and the Lakers are all in on building a championship roster around Luka, so the logical move is to trade Bronny to whatever team signs his father for a bit more draft capital. That's 3 separate signals lining up in the same direction. The open roster spot in Cleveland, the Ayton trade clearing a lane in Los Angeles, and a front office that has openly said it's not sentimental about this anymore. Around the league, people have started reacting to it like it's already happened. On social media, fans and insiders have floated version after version of the deal. Different packages, different centerpieces, but always the same 2 names sitting side by side. LeBron and Bronny headed to Cleveland together. One trade idea that made the rounds had the Cavaliers getting LeBron James, Bronny James, and Adu Thiero, while the Lakers received Lauri Markkanen and Jared Allen in a 3-team deal with Utah. Another version built by a different outlet had it structured as a sign and trade sending LeBron James, Bronny James, DeAndre Ayton, Jake LaRavia, Dalton Knecht, and a $28 million trade exception to Cleveland with Jared Allen, Dennis Schroeder, Dean Wade, and Sam Merrill going back to Los Angeles. The numbers vary depending on who's drawing up the trade machine. The outcome doesn't. Bronny goes with him. Lakers insider Dave McManaman has said the same thing through his own channels. The franchise could make a move involving Bronny following LeBron's next decision. That's not fan speculation anymore. That's someone who covers the team every day, saying the front office is actively thinking about it. And the shift in tone matters here. For 2 straight seasons, Bronny was untouchable in Los Angeles, not because of what he did on the court, but because of who he sits next to in the locker room. One report summed up exactly why the Lakers protected him for so long. For 2 years, the Lakers had every reason to keep Bronny, since drafting him helped convince LeBron to remain in Los Angeles, and the father-son storyline became one of the coolest moments in NBA history. That protection is gone now. As the same piece put it, with LeBron gone, Bronny is no longer tethered to the franchise by sentiment. He simply becomes another young player on a roster the Lakers could use to continue building around Doncic. So that's where things stand. A father who decided he's leaving, a son whose entire NBA situation was built around that father staying, and a team on the other side of the country that's been quietly clearing space for both of them at once. Before we get into what Cleveland actually gets out of this, or what it cost Bronny personally. We need to rewind to the moment that started all of it, the day LeBron told the Lakers he was done. To understand why Bronny's situation flipped overnight, you have to understand what LeBron just did to the Lakers. He didn't get traded. He didn't get bought out. He simply told the organization after 8 seasons that he wasn't coming back. One report laid out the moment cleanly. LeBron became an unrestricted free agent. After informing the Los Angeles Lakers he would not return for the 2026-27 season, ending an 8-year run in Los Angeles. 8 years. 2 stints with Cleveland bookending it. A championship in the middle of all that. And now a clean break at age 41 heading into his 24th season. The Lakers didn't sit around mourning it. They went to work immediately. Los Angeles went on a flurry of moves in efforts to surround superstar point guard Luka Doncic with the pieces needed to contend for a championship. That's the new center of gravity in that building. Doncic, not James. And once that shift happens, every other roster decision gets filtered through it, including what to do with the guy wearing his father's number lower on the depth chart. Meanwhile, the search for LeBron's next home turned into its own circus. His agent Rich Paul hasn't been shy about it either. He's been going on podcasts, pulling out whiteboards, naming teams live on air. During one appearance, he ran through a full list of contenders, and it included pretty much every relevant team in the league. The Knicks, the Sixers, the Celtics, and further down the board, the Cleveland Cavaliers, Minnesota Timberwolves, Denver Nuggets, Miami Heat, Golden State Warriors, San Antonio Spurs, and Dallas. That's not a short list. That's basically every team with cap room and a pulse. But narrow it down to who's actually been treated as a real threat to land him, and it keeps coming back to 2 cities. Multiple insiders have named Cleveland and Golden State as the frontrunners, with Miami mentioned as a third option and a couple of longer shots floated behind them. One report described it directly. Multiple insiders have described the Cleveland Cavaliers as the favorites to land him, with the Golden State Warriors and Miami Heat also mentioned as serious suitors, and the Minnesota Timberwolves and Denver Nuggets floated as longer shot options. Why Cleveland, though? Why does a team he already left twice keep coming back into the conversation? Because of exactly what we just walked through in Cleveland's inactivity. The Cavaliers have been sitting on cap space and open roster spots, like a team that knows something the rest of the league doesn't. And because LeBron's own priorities at this stage of his career don't line up with chasing the biggest paycheck anymore. Reports have consistently indicated that James is prioritizing competitive fit and family input over maximizing his contract at this stage of his career, which could make a sign and trade or team-friendly deal, with Cleveland more realistic than it might otherwise be. Family input. That's the phrase doing all the heavy lifting here, because family input doesn't just mean asking his wife where she wants to live. It means factoring in a 21-year-old son who spent 2 years trying to find his footing, in a league he was drafted into on the back 9 of somebody else's legacy. And LeBron has said outright, more than once, how much playing next to his son means to him. One report noted it flatly. LeBron has stated before how much he loves playing with his son. That's not a throwaway detail. That's the entire reason a 30-team trade grid keeps narrowing down to whichever city agrees to also take Bronny off the Lakers' hands. So here's the picture forming. LeBron isn't just picking a team based on rings or money. He's picking a team willing to do the paperwork to keep his son on the same roster. And that puts an enormous amount of leverage in Cleveland's hands, because they've clearly already decided they're willing to do exactly that. There's a version of this trade that Bleacher Report built out in detail, walking through what a sign and trade for LeBron might actually look like on paper, with Bronny riding along as part of the base package. Under that structure, James would ink a 3-year, $63 million sign and trade deal, with $20 million for the 2026-27 season. The same report floated the idea that James and the Cavaliers could have a behind-the-scenes agreement, that he plays only a couple of seasons but receives his full compensation, similar to what the San Antonio Spurs did years ago with Tim Duncan at the end of his career. That's a career epilogue being drawn up in real time. A short runway, full pay, and his son riding shotgun the whole way. But none of that works unless Bronny actually gets moved. And that's where his own 2 years in Los Angeles come into play. Because what he's done and hasn't done on an NBA court is exactly what's shaping how teams are valuing him in these trade talks. Before any of this trade talk, there was a much simpler question hanging over Bronny James. Could he actually play at this level? He entered the league in 2024, already carrying more attention than production could justify. He'd had a cardiac scare during his one season at USC that cut his college tape down to almost nothing, and he still got drafted, one of the last picks of the NBA draft, for crying out loud. That's not a knock from a hater. That's how his own coverage has described it. The pick itself became the story before he'd played a single professional minute. 2 seasons later, the numbers are what they are. Across his time in Los Angeles, he's averaged 2.7 points, 1.1 assists, and shot 34.8% from 3 across 69 total games. Other tallies have him around 2.7 points, 0.6 rebounds, 1.1 assists, 0.4 steals, and 0.1 blocks per game on 37.4% shooting. Different sources, slightly different splits, same overall picture. A deep bench piece who hasn't been given the runway to do much more than that. There's been growth though, and it's worth naming specifically. His three-point shooting ticked up to 38.7% this past season, enough to offer hope that he might develop into a solid rotational piece out of the backcourt. He's also built a reputation as a plus defender at his size, which matters more in league circles than box scores ever will. One writer covering his trajectory put it simply: he just wrapped up his second season, where he looked more poised and confident than he did as a rookie. Still, poised and confident for a deep reserve isn't the same conversation as ready for a nightly role. And that's the phrase that keeps surfacing anytime his name comes up in trade context. It's not that anyone thinks he's a bust, it's that nobody's rushing to hand him minutes just because of his last name anymore. Here's the part that made this whole situation move faster than anyone expected: the guaranteed money. Whatever happens with LeBron, Bronny's own paycheck for next season isn't in question. His contract with the Lakers for the 2026-27 season is fully guaranteed. One outlet broke down the exact structure, noting he's currently under contract for the 2026-27 season with the Lakers for about $2.3 million. With a team option, LA can exercise for 2027-28. That number matters more than it looks like on paper. A $2.3 million salary is nothing in modern NBA terms. It's the kind of contract that slides into almost any trade as a matching piece, without disrupting anybody's books. It's exactly the kind of value that makes him easy to attach to a bigger deal, rather than something that needs its own blockbuster. And that's the tension sitting underneath this entire situation. On one side, there's a very real argument that staying put is what's best for him individually. One columnist made that case directly, arguing the best thing that can happen for Bronny this offseason is to stay put, with no reason to take him out of his current environment. The same piece pointed out that his path into the league leaned heavily on family, noting he needed the initial pull of his father to get into the league at all, after a freshman year at USC that never really got off the ground due to cardiac trouble. And now, potentially, for the first time in his career, he'd be playing without that same safety net attached to the roster. On the other side, there's the practical reality of how front offices actually operate. Teams don't keep marginal rotation pieces around out of sentiment. Once the reason for the sentiment walks out the door, one report addressing the Lakers' incentives after LeBron's exit put it bluntly: Bronny is no longer tethered to the franchise by sentiment. He simply becomes another young player on a roster the Lakers could use to continue building around Doncic. The same coverage added a caveat worth sitting with. That doesn't necessarily mean Bronny is on the trade block. It simply means the circumstances surrounding his future are dramatically different than they were only weeks ago. And if another opportunity presents itself that helps the Lakers strengthen their roster, he may no longer be viewed as untouchable. That's the corner Bronny's actually standing in right now. Not blacklisted, not protected either. A guaranteed contract that makes him movable, a stat line that makes him replaceable, and a father whose decision could end up making the call for him, regardless of what he personally wants. Which brings us to the other side of this, the team that's been positioning itself quietly and specifically to be the one making that call. Every trade has two sides, and up to now, we've mostly been looking at the Lakers' half of it. So let's flip it. What does Cleveland actually get, and why are they willing to bend their whole cap sheet to get it? Start with where the Cavaliers are coming from. This past postseason ended in a sweep. The Cavaliers got swept by the New York Knicks in the 2026 Conference Finals. That's not a close but not quite ending. That's a team getting run off the floor 4 straight times, on the biggest stage they'd reached in years. And when that happens to a roster this talented, the front office doesn't tinker at the margins. It looks for the biggest swing available. The biggest swing available happens to be a former Cavalier walking back through the door. One breakdown of the fit didn't hold back on the appeal. They clearly need LeBron to reach the promised land again. And a potential starting lineup of Harden, Mitchell, LeBron, Mobley, and Ayton looks really dangerous on paper. That's 4 all-star caliber pieces around a guy who, even at 41, is still producing at a level most players never touch in their prime. His numbers this past season back that up. He averaged 20.9 points, 6.1 rebounds, and 7.2 assists per game for the Lakers. Still an elite offensive weapon, despite being the oldest active player in the NBA. For context on what he's meant to that organization historically, across his 2 stints in Cleveland, he's averaged 27.2 points, 7.3 rebounds, 7.3 assists, 1.6 steals, and 0.8 blocks per game. Different eras, different roster around him, but the production has never really dipped in a way that scares teams off. Now, the mechanics. Adding a max-level piece and his son isn't free, and the roster math gets tight fast. Whatever configuration the trade takes, the Cavaliers are almost certainly going to hit their spending limit in the process. One trade breakdown laid out exactly what that forces. The Cavaliers trigger a first-apron hard cap of $209.1 million, meaning players like Allen, Schroeder, and Merrill must go, to reduce payroll and allow Cleveland to flesh out reasonable bench depth. That's a real cost. Jarrett Allen isn't a throw-in. He's been a foundational piece of that front court for years. But the same breakdown argues the trade-off makes sense structurally, since the Cavaliers must believe they've hit a wall with the Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen pairing, and are highly motivated to bring James home to finish his career, with Mobley sliding over to his more natural position at center, and James at power forward. In other words, this isn't just about adding a star. It's about fixing a positional logjam that's been holding the team back, using the trade as the mechanism to do it. And Bronny's presence in the deal isn't an afterthought bolted onto the side. It's structurally load-bearing. One version of the trade specifically routes him through Cleveland's existing cap tools, noting Bronny James is acquired via the DeAndre Hunter pre-existing traded player exception, allowing Cleveland to generate a sizable $28 million trade exception for Allen's full 2026-27 salary. That's not sentiment. That's a front office finding a technical pathway to make the money work while still bringing in the player LeBron actually wants next to him. A separate report broke down a leaner version of how Bronny specifically could move, describing the cost as minimal, a trade built around minimal draft compensation, reportedly as little as a second-round pick, would let Cleveland absorb his modest contract without disrupting its books. That's about as cheap as trades get in this league. A single second-rounder for a guy with a guaranteed rookie deal, and a recognizable last name. For a team clearing cap room to add a superstar, that's a rounding error. Compare that to the version floated with the Nuggets, which suggests Cleveland isn't the only front office thinking this way. One report described how a separate Lakers trade opened a door for Denver to get creative, framing it as an opportunity to lure LeBron with Bronny James, netting them 2 Jameses in the end. Even teams outside the presumed favorites are running the same math. Figure out how to keep the father and son together, because that's clearly the actual currency in play here, more than any single trade exception or draft asset. That's what makes Cleveland's positioning look less like a coincidence, and more like a plan that's been running for weeks. The quiet free agency, the open roster spot, the willingness to trigger a hard cap and restructure a core front court pairing. That's been together for years. All of it points toward a front office that decided a while ago exactly what it was chasing and has been building the runway for both James' men to land on it at the same time. So if the pieces are already lining up this cleanly on both sides of the country at the same time, what's actually left to happen? What does the finish line look like? And what does it cost the people at the center of it? Here's where things stand right now. Stripped down to the essentials. LeBron hasn't signed anywhere yet. Cleveland hasn't formally announced anything involving Bronny, but every roster move on both coasts has been pointed in the same direction for weeks, and the people covering this closest keep describing it the same way. Not as a rumor floating in the wind, but as a plan already in motion, waiting on paperwork. One trade breakdown even attached a specific window to when a deal like this could get finalized, noting the deal would be consummated on July 6, after the NBA's annual moratorium. That's not speculation about some distant future. That's a calendar. That's a front office and an agent who've clearly already done the math on when the ink can legally dry. What happens to Bronny personally in all of this is the part that doesn't show up in any trade grid. For 2 years, every game he played carried his father's shadow over it. Now, if this goes the way it's been trending, he doesn't lose that shadow. He just moves it 3 time zones east into a locker room, where his dad is once again the most important person in the building, except now that building belongs to a franchise, trying to squeeze one last run out of a 41-year-old body before it's too late. There's an alternate version of this story too, and it's worth sitting with for a second. Not every voice covering this thinks reuniting is actually the best basketball decision for the Sun. The strongest version of that argument points out that Bronny's growth this past season, the improved shooting, the defensive reputation, happened specifically in an environment where he wasn't the headline. Now, it may be time to go at it on his own, is how one piece framed it, suggesting that stepping fully outside his father's orbit, rather than following him into a new one, might be the version of this story that actually helps his career the most. But that argument runs directly into a wall built from years of behavior. LeBron has never hidden how much it means to him to share a court with his son. It's the reason he stayed in Los Angeles as long as he did after Bronny was drafted. And by every account, it's the same instinct steering him now. When an entire organization is willing to trigger a hard cap, break up a front court pairing that's been productive for years, and structure a trade exception around a specific 21-year-old's rookie contract, that's not a franchise hedging its bets. That's a franchise that read the room correctly and decided the surest way to land the father was to make room for the son first. So what does this actually mean for LeBron at the end of all of it? It means his last major decision as a player might not be about rings or money or legacy math. It means the biggest free agency storyline of the summer has quietly turned into a family relocation plan, executed through cap sheets and trade exceptions instead of moving trucks. It means a kid who spent 2 seasons proving he belonged on an NBA floor is about to find out whether that belonging travels with him or whether it was always tied to the same jersey his father wore. And it means Cleveland, the city he left twice already, the city that welcomed him back once before under very different circumstances, is once again positioning itself as the place where this version of the story ends, not with a farewell tour, not with a quiet fade into retirement in Los Angeles, but with a father and son on the same roster, in the same city where his whole legacy actually started, closing out a career that's outlasted almost every player he ever shared a court with. Whether that roster spot Cleveland's been holding open finally gets filled with the name everyone expects, that part's still playing out in real time. But every signal, every trade exception, every quiet front office move over the past few weeks has been pointing at the same finish line. Bronny James following his father home. Sources: Bleacher Report sign and trade breakdown, sending LeBron and Bronny to Cleveland. Fadeaway world. Cavaliers saving roster room for Bronny James. Trade idea sends LeBron and Bronny to Cavaliers. Bleacher Report. Latest on Bronny's contract amid LeBron free agency. Hardwood heroics. Cavaliers holding open roster spot for reunion. Lakers insider hints at Bronny trade. Basket news: Cavaliers gain major LeBron homecoming update. Yahoo Sports: Bronny James' best future doesn't involve a trade. Yardbarker: LeBron pursuit may include surprising Bronny twist. Lake Show Life: Lakers send strongest signal yet on Bronny via Ayton trade. ESPN. Sources: Lakers trading Ayton to Wizards for Hardy. Future picks. Yahoo Sports: NBA free agency live updates. LeBron mulls next team. Yahoo Sports: Lakers trade created ideal opening for Nuggets to lure LeBron with Bronny. Cavaliers Nation on X. Bleacher Report trade idea: 212 trillion, 28 billion, 424 million, 93,900.